know.
Big.
In the long and storied history of the NFL, there have been over 7,000 football games. Although there are degrees of importance in every contest, very few attain the status of greatness. A memorable football game is as rare as a masterpiece painting, but also very similar. For like a fine work of art, there is a good deal of subjectivity when it comes to defining its beauty, power, and significance. What is it that makes some games burn brightly even in the dimmest corridors of our memory? To many purists, they are the contests dominated by fiercely aggressive defense. Contact is indeed the most stimulating essence of the sport. But historically, what brings people out of their seats and onto their feet are those gripping affairs where great defense very grudgingly yields to an all-out effort on offense. The great games involve fans as much as players. They are the ones that stretch the emotions of the populace with cheers and tears. So much so that fans and players alike are often mentally and physically drained by game's end. Above all, the truly classic contests are those whose outcome are seemingly decided by some higher order. They are the suspenseful affairs that are only resolved in the final seconds, when desperate men sketch images of victory that, like masterpieces of art, remain forever frozen in time. There have been over 7,000 games played in the NFL. Only a select few stand out as the very best that have ever been played. Most discussions about great football games begin and end with Alan Amici's touchdown and the Baltimore Colts' sudden death victory in the 1958 championship. No game in NFL history is more revered than this overtime epic that began on an unusually mild late December day in New York City. The high-profile Giants featured the likes of Frank Gifford, Alex Webster, Sam Huff, and a coaching staff that included two talented young assistants. To many observers, they had a clear edge over Weeb Eubank's very jittery Baltimore Colts.
In the locker room, everybody's nervous with the first time we've ever played in the championship game in the Yankee Stadium, and Weeb's going down. He brought each guy in. He drafted, he knew us, and he's going down, saying where we came from. He picked us up off the sandlots. He had a great speech. But about 5 or 6 of us never heard it because we were in the head throwing up. We were nervous.
Ironically, once the game began, it was the more seasoned Giants who did some coughing up. Led by quarterback Johnny Unitas, Baltimore took advantage of numerous Giant fumbles to forge a 14-3 halftime lead. A blowout appeared imminent, especially when the Colts drove to the Giant goal line early in the third quarter.
At first we tried just, going over from about the 1 yard line. The ground was rather frozen down on that end of the field. And I didn't get good footing, and I tried 3 times and couldn't get in from the 1 yard line. So John, in his most inventive way, called me to throw a pass. It was going to be a pitch out, and then Jim Muchler was to release from his block and then end up in the end zone. Not having heard that play before, I completely blew it, and I thought it was a sweep. So I got tackled for about a 5-yard loss, and then the whole momentum of that game changed.
In a contest that had equal mixtures of Greek comedy and tragedy, the Giants haphazardly stumbled back. Alex Webster's timely effort following Kyle Rote's fumble set up one Giant touchdown. And in the fourth quarter, the suddenly high-flying hometowners grabbed the lead on Frank Gifford's score. Giant fans dreamed of a championship. With just 2 minutes remaining, it was only a first down away. But a controversial call on Frank Gifford's attempt to gain it on 3rd and 4 began what would be a giant nightmare.
I think they blew the call. There's a mental thing in your head when you have a 3rd down and a yard to go or half a yard or whatever it happened to be. You know when you've made it. I didn't even look over to the yardstick.
Frank, you should have. New York punted, pitting the Colts far back. The lead seemed safe. What happened next, however, altered the course of professional football. Johnny Unitas desperately drove Baltimore downfield. Stunned Giant fans watched in horror. But NFL executives looked on in glee. For the first time, a nationally televised championship mesmerized millions of viewers. Many more tuned in just in time to witness Steve Myra's game-tying field goal and the NFL's first venture into sudden death.
It was very strange. You know, we were all asking each other what happens next, or, you know, the rules weren't too clear on that. So, but that's again where a guy like Unitas always stepped in there. He was the brains of the outfit, no question about it.
Baltimore lost the coin toss. But after the Giants failed again in their opening drive, the third-year quarterback picked up where he left off in regulation. Although only a field goal was needed, the cocky Unitas left little doubt that with the title on the line, he was leaving nothing to chance.
Well, I was just thinking about a score. I would really, you know, the field goal really never entered my mind. I never have put too much strength on field goals myself. I'd rather go for a touchdown. I knew right then and there that we had the ball game on.
John was somewhat criticized for not calling a timeout there and going for the field goal. I think a lot of people have forgotten that it was 3rd down. They thought we were going for it on 4th. But in the event that we missed it, we still had, you know, time for the field goal. But an interesting thing on that play, which was the genius of a Unitas, and a lot of people missed this. We were on the right hash mark, and everybody in the world, including the Giants, thought we were going to go for an off tackle to the left, and if we missed, we'd be right smack in front of the goalpost. And John just took that little bit of a gamble and ran to the right on that play. And everybody was stacked to the left. And he had Lenny Moore there, who was not known as a great blocker. And he threw a key block, and it was wide open. I mean, there wasn't anything to the play.
Through the years, this dramatic championship has been elevated to legendary proportions. Yet legends die hard. Despite well-documented evidence to the contrary, the grandeur of this game is something of a myth.
People have built it up to be such a great game, and it was a good game, but it was far from a great game.
That game was probably the greatest game for the National Football League because of the notoriety of it. But I don't think that game was that good a game, really. I don't think it was the best game ever played.
You know, it wasn't a picture-perfect type game. I think it was just a dramatic ending that most people remember. And it was the greatest game I ever played in, I'll put it that way.
January 2nd, 1982. A steamy, sultry Orange Bowl provided the backdrop for a first-round playoff game between the San Diego Chargers and Miami Dolphins.
Here we go, Dolphins! Here we go!
Even before kickoff, anxious fans spoke sportscasters' jargon to describe their excitement over what would eventually be one of the greatest games ever played.
Well, I tell you, this is going to be a good one, because I tell you get those big boys racking them down. There's some head cracking going on today, and I tell you, they're San Diego Chargers, and somebody's going to fumble, and I tell you, it's going to be a good barn burner down in the Orange Bowl. Danny Fox and David Woodley and all those other big boys. Head cracking going on today, Henry.
Dolphins were slight favorites to win, but the visiting Chargers shocked everyone with a barrage of first quarter scores. Wes Chandler's punt return ignited an outburst of 24 unanswered points as San Diego looked to turn the game into an early rout.
Way to go, James! Way to go, James! Way to bust in there!
But Coach Don Coryell knew that with 3 quarters still to play, too much time remained for his Chargers to relax.
I think what happened is that we woke the Dolphins up and created a sense of urgency within their football team that, hey, we got to get back into this game. We got to get back into it now.
The Dolphins made a key move when they yanked faltering quarterback David Woodley for backup Don Strock.
My first thoughts were, please don't put me in there. But we knew the Chargers had a average defense at that time. My basic feeling was that we had to throw the ball to win the game. The Chargers ran a lot of man-to-man coverage at that time. I could see that, and we tried to run as many man-to-man patterns as we could. And we got Tony Nathan free down the middle a few times, and Duriel Harris off of a double team, and we really basically called all the man-to-man patterns we had in our offense.
I think when you enter a game in that type of situation for a backup quarterback, the pressure's off. Hey, I wasn't there when it was 24-0. I didn't throw the interceptions or make the bad plays. As the backup quarterback, he's coming in really with a clean slate. Pressure was off him, and all of a sudden it was on us. We had not prepared for Strock. We talked about Strock, but we prepared all week for Woodley and scrambling and rolling out and doing the things that he does. Strock, conversely, he just pulls back, takes a look around, he's so experienced, and dumps off to the open receiver.
Strock just came in and he played a perfect game. He couldn't play it any better. He'll never play any better than he did that evening.
While the Chargers were held in check for the rest of the half, the Dolphins were plotting to unleash a schoolyard play that caught the San Diego defense totally unprepared.
We call the play 86 circle curl lateral is the name of the play. Coach Shula said, well, how about the circle curl lateral? And everybody was kind of like, well, how about the circle curl lateral? There was a timeout. There was 6 seconds on the clock. It's pretty hard to believe that a guy would bite on a play like that with 6 seconds to go and you're 50 yards away from the goal line. Then it worked perfectly and made every high school coach in the world happy because every high school has that play.
Strock drops the throw. He's firing for Harris. Lateral, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Dolphins. To Tony Nathan on the last play of the first half.
I tell y'all, we're going to come back. We're going to come back and whoop them. Miami's #1. Never give up on Miami.
When we saw the play develop, we laughed. We said, oh, boy, we're in for it now. And what it did for us is it made us realize that, hey, this game isn't over. This game is going to go right down to the wire, and so be it. We're going to be there, too.
The Chargers roared back on the play of number 80 tight end Kellen Winslow. In a game with many heroes, Winslow earned special notice, setting playoff records for receptions and yardage while overcoming a pinched nerve, a bruised shoulder, and heat exhaustion.
I remember Dave Levy, who's now our offensive line coach. I came out of the game going to the bench, wincing in pain. About a minute later, I ran by Dave, tapped him on the hip, and said, I'm going back in. And as I was running by him, I heard him saying to the coaches upstairs in the press box through the speaker, I don't believe this. He's going back into the game. And I looked back at him and started grinning. And I said, this sounds like TV. It sounds like somebody wrote this.
The drama continued to unfold as both teams seized, then lost the lead. But with only minutes remaining in the fourth quarter, the Dolphins finally took control and appeared to a victory within their grasp.
Dolphins running off the clock. The Chargers have to force a turnover. Strock hands off to the first man. The ball's on the ground. Chargers have recovered. So San Diego has one more shot from their own 18.
Trailing 38-31, the Chargers mounted a desperation drive. With less than a minute to go, San Diego tied the game on a play that probably should have failed.
I was zeroed in on Kellen Winslow. I escaped out to the right and saw Kellen heading back to the corner of the end zone. Didn't even see James Brooks. Well, to my surprise, Kellen couldn't get it. The next thing I know, here's this flash, and it's James Brooks, and he makes the catch for the tying touchdown. That's one that's just pure luck.
The Chargers' good luck continued during the final play of regulation. The Dolphins' Uwe von Schaumann attempted the winning field goal, but Kellen Winslow added to his heroics by blocking the kick. In overtime, the Chargers had their opportunity to win, but the results were similar.
Paderska's ready. It's a 27-yarder. The snap. It's down. He hits it. It's up. It's no good.
Paderska had never missed a game-winning field goal in his career. But then the Chargers blocked a second Dolphin field goal try minutes later, and Miami's fighting spirit had finally reached the breaking point.
In the overtime, when we had the opportunity to win the game and missing the field goal, and I think that moment was probably the big down of that particular day. Even though they beat us later on during the course of the game, I think that moment was probably the most toughest moment to swallow as a player in that game.
The Chargers were given a second chance, and this time they did not fail.
At the end of the game, I felt our offensive line had dominated the Dolphins' defensive line and had demoralized them to the point where, hey, we can't get to the quarterback and we're not going to win.
Behind perfect protection, Fouts picked Miami apart, setting the stage for Paderska's game-winning field goal. On a hot, muggy Florida evening, two teams had waged an epic battle that they would remember for the rest of their lives.
Nietzsche, the German philosopher, once said, if it doesn't kill me, it's going to make me stronger. And that's what that game did. We almost died, and we came through.
I've seen an awful lot of great games, but I think that one has to be at the top. It was uplifting. There was no sense of defeat by anybody involved, or even by the people in the stands. To see it was just man rising as high as he could in a form of athletic endeavor. I felt that I just experienced something rare and unusual that I would not soon be seeing again, if ever.
People react to a Sports Illustrated sneak preview.
And the pops these guys were taking. I mean, you could almost...
Whole game is our championship game with the Bears in 1934. Bears had a great team. I think they came in undefeated. Bronco Nagurski was at his prime.
Bronco, with the style he had of running, with his shoulders not too far from the ground. He was a tall man, about 6'2" and 220. And if you tackle him low, he'd trample you to death. If you tackle him high, he'd carry you 10 yards.
At halftime, I believe we were down by 13-3, and we were pretty well beaten. The field was absolutely frozen. Ray Flaherty, who was our captain and an assistant coach, had come from Gonzaga University in Spokane, and he remembered that in one of his college games, his team had worn sneakers on a frozen field, giving them a great advantage. We couldn't find a sporting goods store in New York that was open. We had an assistant clubhouse man named Abe Cohen with us, who also worked for Manhattan College. We put him in a taxi cab and sent him up to Manhattan College to get the shoes for the basketball team, the sneakers for the basketball team.
Just before the second half started, he had 12 pairs of the largest sneakers he could find, so we put them on.
And we could see him putting on tennis shoes in there. Well, we thought, oh, heck, that's foolish. That's not going to help them. We're going to walk all over their feet. Right away, we sensed something was wrong because they had good footing, and we didn't have good footing. And we were slipping and sliding around, and they were running all over us. And they started just piling up yardage and getting in position, and they ended up beating us 30-13. They just outsmarted us, I guess. That was about the size of it. It was legal. There was nothing wrong with it.
But I remember during that game, George Halas would come out on the field, and he'd look at those sneakers and just shake his head and walk off grumbling.
You give your all to all you do. Don't settle for less from your shampoo. Wash and go Pert Plus.
Ordinary shampoo can't give you this kind of manageability. You need Pert Plus with a unique combination of effective shampoo for cleaning plus conditioner for control all in one. For great, easy-to-manage hair, it's one of a kind.
Just one shampoo does it all for you. Wash and go.
With shampoo, conditioner in one.
Pert Plus.
I'll show you a morning like you've never seen. I'll show you a land where there's still room to dream. And you'll find the wonders that I've always known. 'Cause I call Australia home.
In the late 50s, the Baltimore Colts had turned the NFL championship into a one-horse race, winning exciting title games in 1958 to 1959. But in 1960, in their attempt to win an unprecedented third league championship, the Colts played in a regular season game as memorable as any playoff contest. Against the Detroit Lions in Baltimore, quarterback John Unitas and halfback Lenny Moore, number 24, helped give the Colts an 8-3 lead. Baltimore's prestigious passing attack had already helped earn the Colts 6 wins against only 3 losses, while the inept Lions appeared to be on their way to another losing season. Number 40, Bobby Boyd's interception protected the Colts' expected advantage. But as the game wore on, the predictable ultimately made way for the peculiar. The infallible Unitas to Raymond Berry connection failed to hook up. And moments later, the Lion offense uncharacteristically took Baltimore's defense, and everything else for that matter, head on. Detroit eventually went ahead 13-8 late in the game. However, Unitas, renowned for last-minute miracles, once again began to work his magic. Number 19 cleverly tamed the Lion defense without the aid of a whip and chair.
We thought we had him, and it was a situation that was third down and long yardage, and we thought he was going to throw short. And damned if he didn't go back, and he threw a long one. And it looked as though the ball was going to go way over Lenny's head, and Night Train was right with him. And Lenny leaps horizontally in the air and catches the ball in the end zone. And as soon as he catches the ball, I swear to God, Night Train turned white. He's black. I mean, he got like real crazy. The only thing we saw then was this huge crowd came out of the end zone and covered the field on that side. Meanwhile, we come off the field, and I have 2 people on the sidelines. I don't know how they got there, and I'm fighting with one of them. One guy pulls a knife on me. I'm running around George Wilson, our coach, hoping that should he stab someone, it might be George instead of me. George will say, "What are you doing? You crazy?"
The temporary insanity afflicting both the crowd and the players of this game became even more evident on the ensuing kickoff, with only half a minute remaining.
We kick off to the Lions, and I see Gil Maines hit Alex Hawkins, who was my teammate. He wasn't maybe one of my favorite football players, but he was still my teammate. He took a sucker shot on him and knocked the hell out of Hawkins. And Maines is laying on the ground, so when I run by Maines, I drop kicked him right in the face as hard as I could. But I got caught and I got thrown out of the game. Lo and behold, the next play, Earl Marlowe throws a pass to Jim Gibbons, the slowest guy on the field other than me, and he runs for a touchdown.
The thing I remember is the absolute silence in the stadium. You could hear Jim Gibbons running. It was so quiet. And that was it, boy. There was not one cheer. I mean, it was absolute stone silence. And that pretty well knocked us out of the race in 1960.
Weave Eubanks blamed me for losing the damn game. Just because I got kicked out of the game. It stopped the clock. There was only 14 seconds left to go in the game, and we lost the ball game. And I guarantee you, I didn't know what to say. I got fined $1,000 for doing it, but I said, well, I got satisfaction out of it. I didn't like names to start off with. I thought he was a jerk, but then after you meet the guy down at the National Football League alumni thing, great fella. Going out, getting me beer, buying me pizza, wonderful fella.
I had to put on a different jersey because I thought they were going to kill me. But everybody was in a state of shock. I don't know if they ever got over that shock, but it really was a great shock to the fans.
Well, there have been more famous games for sheer excitement and entertainment. The Lions' zany 20-15 win deserves a place among the NFL's greatest games.
Flashy Los Angeles Rams met the New York Yanks in a game that produced the most yards in NFL history. The Rams featured a variety of explosive players like number 77, Vitamin T. Smith. Their roster included 5 members of the Hall of Fame. One was number 32, Deacon Dan Towler, who raced for a 69-yard touchdown. While the Rams shuttled in a fleet of game breakers, the Yanks were a one-man band. The one man was number 20, George Talifero. Talifero scored on a 65-yard touchdown and almost single-handedly helped the outclassed Yanks amass 600 yards. Talifero rushed for 2 touchdowns and passed for a 3rd. When a Ram lineman focused on Talifero for a fatal split second, he could not recover in time to cut down the angle on Yank receiver Bob Solari, number 17. Unfortunately, a few good soldiers could not defeat an army as the Rams rolled up 735 yards. With receivers like Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch and quarterbacks like Norm Van Brocklin and Bob Waterfield, number 7, Los Angeles outmuscled the Yanks. The two teams combined for an astounding 1,133 yards. But Los Angeles overpowered New York for a convincing 48-20.